What's up, NIO family? It's Rey-Jay back with another video. And in this one, I want to break down what's happening with NIO, Tesla, SPY, Nvda, the QQQ, and a couple of other tickers. I'm going to break down some big data that's coming out for tomorrow as we have the PCE data report, how this could end up affecting the markets, which you should be watching for as time progresses. But let me just mention that I am not a financial planner. Make sure you take nothing I say as financial advice. And also, if you guys can, please check out the Moomoo link. Deposit $100 and you're guaranteed 5 free stocks. If you deposit $1,000, you're guaranteed 15 in total. And the offer ends in just about 6 days from now. Anyways, looking at we have a bit of a downtrend right here. We actually went to about 4.9. We've been downtrending since then. We also have a distributive structure that could actually lead us to dipping all the way down towards the support at 4.15. And NIO is continuing to look bearish in my personal opinion. But the question is, what's going to happen with the data that's coming out? How could this affect the markets? I'll be talking about that first before I break down the charts. Tomorrow is going to be Friday, July 26, 2024. Please note that 1 hour before the market opens, we have the core PCE data report, PCE for all items, and also for year over year and month over month. This is going to be very, very important. This is going to give us more insights on how inflation is looking. And just note that this is also heavily dictated by CPI. This data comes an hour before the market opens. And I just want to note that there's a good chance that we end up below expectations. We're expecting PCE year over year to be 2.5% and core to be at 2.5% or below that as well. We're most likely going to get decent data because for CPI, which already came out for the month of June, this was basically pretty decent looking. We actually got a negative reading, not to mention the fact that the inflationary data is continuing to just plummet. And we're actually going to likely see, in my opinion, PCE followed a very, very similar trend. So most likely we're going to get a decent report and we'll have to see what kind of reaction the market gets for it. That's going to be key for how things end up moving. Now for Friday, we also have other earnings coming out. Don't forget about Charter and a few more. Everything is very, very minor. It's nothing too crazy, so I'm not going to focus too much on that. As far as NIO goes, NIO's 12 full stack technologies made their debut in 2023. And over the past year, NIO's in-house R&D has been progressing from all aspects for lots and lots of results. So this is actually helping to bring in not only more customers, but a lot more innovation for the technologies and a lot better usage. So that's actually something else that's worth noting. Also, there's been some more news coming out that China has increased its vehicle subsidies. This is actually very, very useful. That's actually including a stimulus program of about $41.5 billion to subsidize purchases of passenger vehicles and consumer electronics. This is actually very useful. So this does include NIO. This could actually help them to some extent. On top of this, there's some news right here as we had about 40 million in volume, still below average, and the short volume is still kind of flat. Not to mention, the analyst ratings are the same. Fridays have a tendency of being green about 53% of the time. There's not really a whole lot else that's going on with this. So now let's focus on the charts. The charts are very, very interesting, very crazy in my personal opinion. Let's talk about that now. So as you guys know, the charts are very interesting for NIO as we have a bit of a downtrend right over here. If we lose structure, I do anticipate we could be dipping down to about 4.15. Technically speaking, we do look a bit more bearish. However, thanks to PC, there's a good chance that data will be decent. So this might actually cause NIO to push a little bit in the morning tomorrow. It's about 4.36, but then there's a risk of us dipping lower to come down to fill this gap. So just be very, very careful. I still think that NIO could dip a little bit more. SPY is also looking a little bit more bearish. We've been dipping quite a bit, especially on the 4-hour as we lost key support. However, I want to note that tomorrow with PCE data coming up, we could still gap up and try to push a little bit higher. We had a pretty weak close. I'm going to be watching to see if this establishes a new structure. Do we end up attempting to break through some key resistance levels? Will we manage to break past 542 and hold? Or will we establish a lower high and then reject? I think we're going to gap up tomorrow thanks to PCE, maybe try to push a bit, but watch and see if we get a rejection. If we pump and then reject and continue lower, then there is a risk of this dipping all the way down into like the lower 530s, 536 and 531 potentially. But if we manage to break past 548 thanks to PCE and there's a big bounce, then yes, the market could make a big reversal. So I'll be watching to see if that ends up being the case. Make sure you watch your levels very carefully and we'll see what the move ends up being. For other factors out there, we have Nvda. It's on a bit of a downtrend right here, losing support. We're barely at 111 right now. If we turn bullish, we want to see it break past 115. If we fail to do so, I'll be looking for a dip all the way back down to these lows. And we could be looking for a move back down to 110 then 107. We look bearish, technically speaking. However, we might rebound a bit thanks to PCE, and we'll have to see if that establishes a lower high and we continue. So far, that's looking more probable to me. For Bitcoin, we're trying to break to the upside right now. We'll be looking to see if we get close to about 66,000. And then we'll see if we get a rejection. I am concerned about Bitcoin because we have a possible left shoulder here in the head, and we could be forming a right shoulder only to reject. So we might push a little bit higher, but then see if we end up forming that right shoulder. For Tesla, we're not looking that great. Tesla dumped after earnings came out. It rebounded a bit today, only to reject it a little bit. So it's still trying to base around this 212 area, but it's looking a little bit weak to me. It hasn't officially gone a big breakout. It hasn't broken past 230. So it's still looking a little bit lackluster. We ended up closing around 220, only to dip back down to about 219. So there is a risk of us kind of popping up tomorrow morning. We could even try to retest 225. But if we fail to break it, we could be dipping back down to our 200 EMA, back down to 212. If we do break 225, we could try to rebound, but just note there is a risk of some downside. The trend is still bearish. We're kind of struggling to break 225, so we'll just have to see what the reaction is. But I do anticipate we're going to push a little bit higher tomorrow, depending on PCE, and we'll see if we get a rejection or not. That depends on a lot of different factors. For excuse me, ES, we're looking kind of bearish right now. There's a risk of some more downside as we've come down to fill this gap. We'll see if we rebound to about 54, 80 or something around that area, maybe a little bit lower. And then we'll see if we get a big rejection, start dipping or not. I'll be watching for that. For NQ, we're trying to rebound only to possibly reject. If we fail to break past 19,200, we'll be looking for a dip back down towards the 18,000 area. So watch for that. For the QQQ, we're also on a bit of a downtrend right over here. We're going to be looking for a retest of 460. I think we might try to rebound thanks to the data. But if we fail to break past 460 and 464, there could be another rejection. And we're still at risk of dipping all the way down to about 450. So you want to be very careful. There's still a risk of more downside looking at the current trend. So watch for that very carefully. For Aapl, Apple's also on a bit of a downtrend. We could be retesting 218. We got to break 220 to turn bullish. We kind of rejected so far, so look for another retest of the 218s. And if we get a rejection, we could continue to dip lower all the way down to our 200 EMA. So look for a pop and drop as a most likely possibility, but we'll see what kind of reaction we get with PCE. For the IWM Russell 2000, we're looking more bullish than the markets. As long as we hold above 220, we could try to push for 224 all over again. If we lose 220, we'll be dipping back down towards 216. I'll be watching to see if that ends up being the case or not. So watch for it very carefully. We still look bullish, so it might try to retest 224. For Coinbase, we got a little push towards the end of the day. We might try to push back up to 240, but just be careful, guys, because even if we do get a little pop, we'll have to see if we reject or not, as we still have this big unfilled gap below into the 219 area. So look for a little rebound towards 240 and see if we get a rejection or not. For Amazon, we're kind of rejecting as well. We still have a head and shoulders like structure. There's still a risk of more downside. Could retest 182 depending on PCE, but if we reject again, it may continue to dip lower into the mid 170s. For Meta, there's a bit of a downtrend. We're kind of dipping right here. We could be looking for a retest of close to 460. If that rejects, we'll continue to dip lower. Technicals show we might be dipping into the 440s, so it still looks more bearish to me, but there might be a little rebound initially, and it could lead to a rejection later on. Microsoft is looking more bearish still. There's no sign of a bounce. This is depending on PCE. It is possible to retest 420 or so, but then it might just reject. And there's a risk of us dipping down to 410. For Google, we're on a bit of a downtrend. We could continue to fall right here. We could be looking for a move all the way down to 165. We might rebound to 170, then reject and start dipping lower as well. With that being said, I want to thank you all so much for listening. That's what I'm seeing, at least for the charts. There is still a lot of downside potential, but we may get an initial gap up tomorrow, depending on PCE data. Might cause the market to gap up, but there is a risk of this not really panning out as well, because even with good data, the market may not last. The market is still looking relatively weak, in my personal opinion. So we'll see how things go. With that being said, I want to thank you all so much for listening. Have a great day, guys, and peace out.